Call the meeting to order. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You roll call, please.
Commissioner Digital,
Here.
Commissioner Wire, Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here. On old business and that, number one will be postponed to September 19th. So with that adjustment, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Seeing no appearances or acknowledgements, is there anything anyone wants removed from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under old business, second reading of ordinance 1650, property tax levy. And we had the first reading on that a couple weeks ago, and there are no changes, correct? And so this is the data that we received from Pier that the property taxes will be drawn from. Anything you want to add to that?
I would just note that the current mill levy is 6.241 and the new mill levy for next year will be 5.178 on the city's side.
Okay. Questions or comments? Not, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve second reading of ordinance 1650 property tax levy.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under new business, update of the city hall and police station. And Jameson, do you want to start that?
Sure. Actually, so I know Dre's on his way, he's running a couple minutes late.
Yes.
We want to just tackle one or two other items until he gets here. Is that okay with you?
Oh, no, that's fine.
Let's just do that.
We can move on to, how about we move down to number 3 at the moment, which is first reading of ordinance 1652 discretionary formula. And you or Sonia, you?
Yeah, I can speak towards this. So this past legislative session in Pier, a bill was passed which extends the discretionary formula to be used by municipalities, and it moves it from 5 years to 7 years. Previously, it was a formula that allowed certain eligible projects to be paying property tax on a formula over the first several years, 20% the first year, then 40, 60, 80 by the 4th year. And that was something that was only allowed for counties to be deciding which pieces to implement. And this bill, which passed this last year, allows municipalities to decide whether to adopt those formulas. And then the payment of the formulas changes so that 25% of property tax in years 1 and 2, 50% in years 3 and 4, and 75% in years 5 and 6. With that bill, there were a few different areas that cities can choose to adopt. So it's not for every project or anything like that. It's focused on residential areas, trying to make it easier for residential projects to come to fruition. The two portions that are in ordinance before you today that would be adopting would be for commercial residential structures and affordable housing structures, each with 4 or more units. So in general, these would be multifamily residential projects. Casey Crabtree, with the senator hat on for our district, was one of the people spearheading this in the legislative session. And then now that he is back into his day job at Heartland as the economic development director, he is using that hat to work with communities who are interested in adopting the formula. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here with us today, but this is a 2 reading thing for ordinances. So if you have questions, we can certainly pass those along or have him join us in the next meeting. He would be very capable of addressing a lot of questions. The language that is in the ordinance before you today was drafted from the Municipal League with their attorneys. It's been adopted by a few communities throughout the state thus far. largely some of the smaller communities. One portion that I will note we did not include in this ordinance was that you could adopt this formula for any improvement to any residential structure that's valued over at $5,000 or more. We thought that got a little bit messier, and for the time being, we wanted to just focus on the multifamily and affordable housing portions of that. Down the road, if we wanted to consider that, we certainly could, or at any time the commission would like to see fit. I'd like to see what some other communities do, especially if some choose to adopt that and how that works for them. That's all I've got. I'll stand by for any questions.
Any questions from the commission?
It's always nice to have another tool to enhance our community, so.
And I know there's some projects out there that are just right on the edge of being feasible or not, and things like this can help tip it over. Another note that I'll make is that this doesn't really overlap with TIF projects. Typically with TIFs, if you're awarding those to any larger development, you're going to be asking them to waive the discretionary formula, because in order to pay off that TIF, which they're on the hook for, they want everybody to be paying that property tax 100% from the get-go. So this would be used in a different way than some of the other tools you have at your disposal today.
Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to adopt? First reading.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1652.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under number 4, we ready for number 4 on that?
Yeah.
Adopt resolution 2022-42, appointment of city engineer. Again, I'll ask Jameson if he wants to address this first.
Yes, we have Ryan here. Yes, there he is, right there. Okay, Ryan here, he can speak to this as well. So when we had restructured our engineering department into the Department for Engineering and Community Development, we knew that there are some changes need to be made. And one would be selecting an engineering firm that can provide some professional services to fill in some gaps that our staff currently weren't able to do so. In seek of that, we had created an in-depth RFQ, request for qualifications process, that allowed any engineering firm interested to submit their qualifications for us. Through that process, we interviewed 4 different firms, all very qualified. And the committee, which was, I believe, 5 staff and 2 elected officials, all agreed in the end that we wanted to recommend to the commission to approve Banner Associates as the city engineering firm, and specifically Weston Blasius as the city engineer and Pat Carey as the assistant city engineer. Weston is here with us today. It's probably no surprise to anybody that we're making this recommendation. Banner is certainly an excellent firm that we have a long history with. I will note that we had several excellent firms, and it actually was a really difficult decision. But in the end, the long history we've got with Banner and their history of excellence too, and of just performing high quality work, and their wide range of engineering services that they can offer to the city are some of the reasons that we decided to recommend them for people. Ryan, anything to add?
I think that's something that.
Weston, any words?
Yeah,
Come on
I'd
up.
like to just thank.
Weston, if you would, for the benefit of those at home, if you wouldn't mind moving up to the chair there and giving your name, because that way it saves us phone calls. of, Who was that talking?
So I'm Weston Blasius with Banner Associates. On behalf of Banner, I'd like to thank the committee for going through this process and recommending Banner for the appointment as a city engineer. We've had the opportunity to work with a lot of the staff at Madison over a number of years before my time here, but I've had the opportunity to work with a number of staff members and have enjoyed it thoroughly. Madison's got a great organization, a great staff, and we're just thrilled to be a part of this community and excited to continue the relationship with the city of Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission, questions or comments?
To what capacity do you see us working with them here initially?
Great question. Yeah,
Thank you.
Ryan, I'll have you come up and address it. Great question. I will punch it off the record.
We'll utilize this on an as-needed basis, and so, if a new subdivision comes up and maybe we have some questions about the experience that banner would have and that kind of thing. That's something we utilize them for. Capital improvement planning, banners are already helping us with that a great deal with our SRF application and such like that. And so they would continue doing those kinds of things. And then just, as we have these number of projects and as our projects have gotten larger, it's just the volume of work and the volume of the amount of people to contact and keep up with, and Department of Ag and Natural Resources and all the other agencies. This city engineer position can certainly help us out in that, give us advice that then we can follow through or help us carry some of that water. So this would be as needed. There'll be times when I don't think it'll be utilized a great deal, and then there's gonna be other times where the workload might support quite a bit. So,
Do we pay them just based on usage, I guess?
yeah, it's just an hourly rate and based on usage. Yeah.
And there are two people that basically are assigned as contacts, with Madison that we would go to first. And then from there, as usual, if, we need expertise that's beyond our capabilities and that, then, they would reach out within their company and that to fulfill those needs.
Did we get to pick them, or these guys draw the short straw?
We asked the
We
engineering
asked.
firms in their RFQ proposals to submit kind of what their recommendation would be for reporting structure, communication structure. And so they're the ones that were put forward on behalf of Banner, but I think it certainly makes logical choices. But, if Rick Nybert in our wastewater plant needs to talk to somebody on that area, he can call Dennis Ripline directly at Banner with his expertise there. We're not limiting staff from having those normal working relationships that they've developed over the years.
And I feel like we already do some of this stuff to some extent, we just have had different agreements with them for services, and now this will be in place where we can utilize that when needed.
On certain instances, we use different firms. Do you see that changing, or?
No, I don't think it has to, no. I mean, we're not looking to sole source anything here. It's just, we can still work with other firms, and we will still work with other firms. We work with KLJ at the airport and DGR for the electrical. That will continue.
Other questions? Questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-42, appointment of city engineer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Number 5, adopt resolution 2022-43.
Would you like to jump back?
Well, I just thought we would do this one real quick and then.
Absolutely, you can do that. You're the boss.
Adopt a resolution number 2022-43, amend employee compensation schedule B. And, Jameson or some?
Yes, so this item is in relation to amending and creating some positions within the city. We're finding that there's some areas that just have significant workload issues and we're trying to alleviate them. And there's some areas that could benefit the city as a whole. So there's 2 changes here. I will start with the GIS and project engineer. It's a position we've had currently at a salary position, grade 20. That employee has left on for new change in her life. And as we are looking at what changes need to be made, we see that the difference that we've had from when she was first hired a few years ago to where we're at now. Her position really focused on creating a GIS system, building lots of layers of maps, very, very technical in nature, with station utilities building. And now we're seeing that position can be balanced a little bit more with the GIS as well as a project technician or technical engineer side of things too. Somebody that can be more out on the site and specifically providing assistance to the engineering department. With those things in mind, a few changes we're looking at making is one, it'd be moving from the utilities department to the engineering community development department. We very much want to emphasize that we want this new person to continue to have strong relationships with the utilities department, spend time with those staff and know them and work with them on a day-to-day basis. But when we look at other cities, it is very customary for this type of position to be reporting to an engineering department. With the supervision falling underneath the director for engineering and with on the understanding that we don't have to have somebody with an engineering degree in this position. We are gonna be altering the title from a project engineer to a GIS, let me get the right wording, engineer technician. Before there wasn't a requirement for an engineering degree, but it was in the title and it was emphasized. And we recognize that that would be a benefit to the position, but it's not necessarily required. And in fact, in many cases, much of their work that they would be doing would be requiring an engineering degree. So tweaking the title and then the grade down to a 19 to reflect what those duties would be. And then moving it to section C, full-time non-exempt positions under engineering community development. Any questions on that position change? Okay, the second change would be creation of a new position for information technology coordinator. Right now, we have an excellent working relationship with Infotech, and we do not expect that to change. But we see that there is just growing needs in the IT sector. Sonia can attest that last week she spent probably 10 to 15 hours as an IT person. And when she spends 10 to 15 hours as an IT person, she's not spending 10 to 15 hours as a finance officer. So, one thing we want to do is make sure that the staff that across the city that sometimes have to put on different hats can continue to keep their main hats on and focus their energy where their skills are best served. Secondly, this person can serve as a primary point of contact within the city. So anybody has IT needs, they can go to the city IT person. If that person needs assistance or something that goes above and beyond them, they can go to Infotech and serve as a primary point of contact. Very much looking forward to that. I think there's many departments across the city that certainly see the need for an IT person that would help alleviate their workload. We'd also see that person taking some of the technology responsibilities such as the load management system and some other responsibilities from the utility departments to help alleviate some workload over there. Okay, I think that's all the thoughts in my head on that position. Yeah, any questions?
Questions, comments? Anyone from the audience? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-43, amend employee compensation schedule B.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now moving back up to number 1, an update on the City Hall Police Station. And Jameson, do you want to start? that?
Yeah, I did put together some visual aids here to assist. If I can bring that up. She's got her IT hat on again. Thank you, Sonia.
Right.
Can you make that any bigger? Okay, so I think it's been some time since we have addressed the commission on the status of our construction for our new police station and city hall. I'll start with kind of going through the need, and if anybody wants examples, they can walk through this facility to see some of this. In general, the existing facility is undersized, it's aging. We've had significant water leaks, HVAC issues, both on the air conditioning side as well as the heating side. Ryan in his office can attribute to some discomforting temperatures that occur in his office throughout the year. Windows are largely inefficient and probably get some improvements. The siren tower is degrading. If you look at the men's bathroom here, that's kind of been closed for some time, and a lot of the water leaks are showcased in there as well. Just a wide range of things that show that the facility has served its purpose. Specifically looking at the police, they are lacking space for offices, evidence storage, and interviewing. I'll call it interviewing in particular because as it is now, in some situations, they need to be bringing victims in for interviewing and questioning as well as suspects, and they sometimes encounter each other, and it opens up the opportunity for re-victimization, which is exactly the opposite of what we want to be doing. So they'd be looking for more space on that side. Evidence storage, I think they've got evidence in a few different locations and just outgrowing what they have there. Administration, the city hall side, similarly lacking office and meeting space. This IT person, as an example, will probably position them over in the utilities building. Just there's no space over here for them, and certainly we have staff over there as well. Of additional importance, our facility here is lacking ADA accessibility. This limits customers from accessing all of our departments the way that everybody should have access to, engineering in particular. There's many times when somebody comes in, has questions or needs for building permit or other items, and our staff have to come down to them because the residents can't get upstairs to the second floor for them. And finally, safety concerns, points of entry, if we have any kind of active shooters or anything else that might be a situation. You'd like to think that wouldn't be what happens, but as we've seen, sometimes crazy things happen and sometimes it comes right through our town as well. So there's always safety concerns with this type of building as well. For the next slide, I'll go through some of the history and background of this project from a high level. In 2016 is generally when city officials began the most recent push for a new facility. They started with the police station. Since then, they've considered everything from renovating existing buildings such as this one, other buildings like the Cars for Less on the west side of town, building at a new location, as well as building in conjunction with the Lake County Sheriff's Office. Ultimately, all of those options have been exhausted or ruled out for one reason or another. In 2018 was really when the city started pursuing construction of a new station at our property south of the Mass Municipal Utilities, aka the Cars for Less. A year later in 2019, the decision was made that if we're building a new city police station, we should include a city hall in that project while we're going through the construction, because both sides have needs for a new facility. Then in 2022, just this year, we've been partnering with RSA Architecture to finalize the building designs and get more into the weeds and the details of what exactly that would look like. Throughout the last year, staff and elected officials have toured other facilities and just put a lot of thought into what it is exactly that we'd like to see. And then last month in August of 2022, we've begun discussions with adjacent landowners south of the Cars for Less and the property acquisition. And that's really the item that prompted us wanting to do an update to the commission and to the public, so that if there's any questions, we can address them, and so that the commission, you guys have all the information at your disposal to direct staff moving forward. The next couple slides show the area on the west side of town. A, that's highlighted now, is where we have our public works and our utility offices and our shops currently. Next slide shows B. Looks like I got the highlighting off a little bit here. There we go. B is where we're looking for the new city hall and police station up until this last month. You can see there's some overlap with A there. There's two buildings in particular, which I'll be coming back to in a couple slides. The Cars for Less, which is what our police favorably call their West Precinct. They've got a couple officers over there due to lack of space over here. And then a building to the west, which is largely vacant, just some equipment in there, which is kind of eyed for our water department to have a larger space. And then C is the new property that we've been in discussions with the property owner at. In this particular instance, the northeast corner would be where the building would be located. The bulk of the properties actually is a man-made lake there, which would make a recreation area. And then the southeast, which is out of the area that's highlighted, is where the property owner would like to have a small residence and shop to call home that he would be looking to keep. Next slide. So as we're looking at the new location, we wanted to weigh the pros and cons. On the changes in costs, some of the cons, I guess you could say, there's certainly acquisition costs for buying a new property. Roy's been in communications with him. I don't know what number we're at or if that's public or not, but there's certainly going to be a cost for purchasing this property. I will note that there was a fire there a month or so ago, and that's made it more opportune for him to sell the property and for us to purchase it, as he's expecting some insurance money to help bridge that gap, I guess, between what we'd be willing to pay and what he'd be willing to sell for. Property maintenance is also something for the commission to take into consideration. With taking on new property, there's certainly going to be some staff time needed to maintain it, particularly the recreation area, as we're looking at that as an opportunity for expanding access to our public. Then I'll note a couple, what I view as positives. With this new location, one of the big advantages is that we could utilize the existing buildings that I called out in that section B earlier, rather than demolishing them. There's the two buildings there. The Cars for Less building, for the time being, we'd probably leave as is, but we could replace some windows, maybe some siding, and use it for storage. And then the west building on the city side that we've had for a little bit longer is just vacant, and their water department to repurpose that. if we would keep the building where it's at, the old location, we tear those down, so we'd have demolition costs, and we'd also be looking at a new building for the water department, so they'd have a better place to call home. So there's certainly some benefits to using those buildings rather than demolishing the building new. And the second part I noted was removal of basement from design. One thing that the City Hall Committee has been toying with is when we toured two other facilities, newer city halls, they both had large basements that were excellent for storage use at their city staff, highly recommended. So as long as we're building a new building, we thought maybe we should look into adding a basement. Well, with the keeping of that Cars for Less building and having storage in there, we really don't feel there would be the need for the added cost for the basement. So we've been weighing back and forth, but we think we could rule that out. And that'd be $75 to $100 per square foot. And the size of the building, you'd be looking at $1 million, give or take, that we'd be saving by not having that basement. And then finally, a couple other factors I'd like to know, just in general, the improved location. The old location, we could make work. We could make it work for the Cars for Less spot. It's a little bit smaller than we'd like. It's kind of shoehorning it in there. If that's what we had to work with, we'll make it work. I will say that up front. It is closer to the utilities building than we'd like. So the new location, we allow to have a little bit more space. We have a significant more amount of parking to have at our disposal, and the building moves closer to Highland, which is better for visibility. And then the recreation area, we believe would be a huge asset to have for the community. Some of the ideas we have would be to use some grant funds to put a trail around it, walking, biking, dog walking, whatever people would see fit. You could put a dock in it, you could stock it with fish. And we've been talking to the Game Fish and Parks to see what opportunities they have. Russell Wilson is on their board, and he is willing to, he stopped in today to talk about some of the opportunities they've got. So when I get to the end of my presentation, once I see everybody's eyes sufficiently glazed over, I'll turn it over to Russ and he'll wake you all up. Next slide, I do have some handouts that I will hand out to the commission, and then I have a few extras, not enough for the whole audience, if anybody wants the media or otherwise, we can pass those around. I'm passing out two of them. One is the site layout for the building. And that's the first one we'll be looking at with the red building right in the middle. So the north chunk, you can kind of see a dotted line going through there in the TV. That's the Cars for Less where we were looking at putting it before. Within that area, you can see that there's an existing Cars for Less building as well as space for future parking. I don't anticipate that we would be improving the parking lot at this time. Just know that that's plenty of area for more parking. And in general, we kind of view that as the employee parking for both utilities as well as the administration and police station. I got some great Van Whites here, don't I? Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And then the south side is where we have the building. The west side of that is a parking area for police and other vehicles. And then the east is a two-story administration building, 11,600 square foot per floor. And then to the south, we have public parking within the entrance to the building. We'd also have parking available for people who'd like to utilize that recreation area to the west. Next slide, and the second handout I had is the interior design. I won't go through every room, but RSA was kind enough to do some highlighting so you can see what general layout is. On the first floor, of course, we have the parking garage to the west, and then all the blue is the police station. I've always been very impressed with the thought and the design that went into this, both from our police chief and from RSA's side of things. As they would walk you through this facility, it would meet their needs for a long time. It would work a lot better than what we have right now. Again, I won't go into the room to room. The green on the northeast would be the finance department. This comes with a drive-through on the north side. So for any member of the public that isn't wanting to come into the building, just wants to have a quick access to pay a bill or access to finance department, otherwise that drive-through would be available. Especially in the winter, we can see that being enticing for our residents. Southeast then has orange, which is for the engineering department, largely office space there. A lobby in the middle, and then the second floor. Yep, in the middle of the lobby, we got the elevator and the stairs going to the second floor. And here we have on the east in the red, that would be the new commission room, along with the conference room available for meetings or executive session or whatever we would need. And then in the north is the human resources and the administration offices, room for growth there as well. Mayor's office, city administrator, HR would be the staff up there. Our new IT person would likely be in there as well. The gray areas are all shared use, restrooms, etc. The light blue, kind of the bottom right-ish, is all shell space, so for future growth. We want this build, we don't want to be putting money and time and effort into a building that we outgrow in 10 years, and this is a building that certainly would fit our needs for 50 years or more. And then the yellow is shared areas again, fitness, in a break room, etc. Ms. White, the next slide, or is that it? Questions? Okay, so before we go to any general questions, Russ, could you come up and maybe share what you've learned or what the opportunities we have there?
Thanks, Jameson, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Russell Olson, not wearing my Heartland hat, just the vest today. So actually, for the last 6 years, I've been on the Game Fish and Parks Commission. Governor Dugard appointed me 6 years ago, and Governor Noem was kind enough to reappoint me 2 years ago. And during that time, I've been involved in a lot of fun projects all across the state, and none really here in Madison. And so that I don't overcommit us to anything on behalf of the Game Fish and Parks, they sent Kip Rounds with me, who is our aquatic habitat and access biologist, and he can talk a little bit more about urban fisheries. But you know, for some time now, Ryan Hagan, I and Kip have all been exchanging correspondence. Before I knew that you guys were looking at this site, we had looked at other sites potentially to create an urban fishery right here in Madison, because, you know, we have Lake Herman to the west of us and Lake Madison to the east. Doesn't mean that all kids can fish in those lakes. You gotta be able to get there. And so to create opportunities for kids where they could ride their bikes or walk, we wanted to really concentrate on developing an urban fishery right here in Madison. This site looks really good to us. There's a lot of great things there where, I mean, honestly, we could have this thing as close to turnkey as possible. And I have Kip tell you a little bit more about all of the fun stuff that we as a department would be willing to provide the city as a partnership in that. But as far as getting in and having it fish ready, this is a great site for us. So if you guys decide to go forward with the acquisition of that property, we stand ready to help make the urban fishery a reality and get some kids and not just kids of all ages fishing at that location. So if it's okay with you, maybe I just have Kip give you the Reader's Digest version of what an urban fishery looks like and what the department would be willing to assist the city with in our partnership.
Yeah, Kip Browns, I'm the aquatic habitat and access biologist for Game Fish and Parks out of Sioux Falls. It's a really exciting opportunity, I think, for the city and for the department to potentially get involved with a project like this, to create an urban fishery, fishing opportunity for everyone, including especially kids. It's become a really big priority of the department, just because they get so popular and get a lot of use, get kids outdoors, and that's a big priority for the department right now and going forward. And so the way the department's role in this, if the acquisition went through and we manage this as an urban fishery, would be to first stock the water body. We'd stock it regularly, probably every year. We encourage kids or anyone to keep fish if they catch, and as such, we mitigate that harvest mortality if there is any with additional stocking. And we usually stock with catchable size fish. So we're not stocking fish so that they grow and become a part of the population. As soon as they hit the water, they're catchable and they're adult size fish. So in addition to that, we would also like to get involved, have the opportunity to increase access to the pond. And so a lot of what we've been doing in recent years for access, especially on urban fisheries, is to put in a fishing pier. And so the fishing piers that we put in are floating fishing piers that stay in year round. There's little to no maintenance with them. They're ADA compliant, and they are a big draw for locals, especially kids, just to get away from that shoreline, get to a little bit deeper depth and get after some fish. And so that would be the main, right off the bat, our main priorities is to, one, assess the potential fish population that already exists in this pond. Like we've mentioned, it's almost turnkey. We know there's fish in it, we just don't know what. And so right away, we probably want to assess that fish population and depending on what we find, get some fish in as early as we can and kind of get the ball rolling. And so we'd also like to see, potentially get involved with access trails going around the pond. We've seen in the past and in previous partnerships with cities on these urban fisheries that those access trails are a big component to give folks an opportunity to use the entire pond, not just where the fishing pier is installed. And so those are some ways that, we'd like to get involved with this if given the opportunity.
No, very, very good. Very, very good. So I want to speak just a little bit too on it. When I was mayor before, and that one of the concerns that I had after the hospital was built out here was we had to purchase vehicles to fit the building that we had on Union. And one of the safety concerns is we had to have someone in the street every time that they backed out of that building for fear, that they may hit somebody who was on their way to the hospital or something and not paying attention. So when the opportunity came up to purchase the East River Transformer Station, we moved forward on it. And that was the right thing to do. And when we started, when I came back on as mayor and saw that we were looking at the city hall being in that location, a concern that I had was with the drive-through putting back into place and not the same thing again. And so when I had our second meeting with RS, I didn't know about the fire on Bill Highland's place. And so when we were sitting here, I asked them to move it to the other side of the trees to see how the building fit. And they said, it fits perfect. You mean where the house had the fire? And I said, what fire? Well, they said he had a fire in that house a few days earlier. So I said, okay, let's just put it on pause. I'm going to get a talk and start the conversation with Bill. And I did. And back in when I was mayor before, he had wanted to be annexed into the city and subdivide his property so he could sell the house and just add on living quarters to his shop. So he had less to maintain. He said, I don't need that big a house for myself and my age. This opened up an opportunity. So we started talking. He has insurance money coming. We talked about a dollar value, less than that, and he keeps his insurance money. So dollar-wise, it's a very, very smart move to do that. And then Russ and I had been talking prior to this, about looking for a place for a fishing pond in town. But correct me if I'm wrong, it couldn't be along the active waterway. So up until this point, I had not located a spot that could be, made into a fishing pond. This one here just happens to be a former gravel pit. Correct me, Mr. Pitts, if I'm wrong. A former gravel pit that was, the gravel was dug out of it. And I've been told that it is 15 feet deep, at least on the east end. And that there has been fish in it before. And there's also cormorants that like to, come along and have fish for dinner. So to me, everything fit into place. This is the right place to put it, the right thing to do. And so I am on board and ready to promote this moving forward. In the past, when I was mayor, we did have a lot of conversation with the county on putting something together. And as everyone knows, the county is having their own difficulties financially with just trying to maintain roads and bridges. And so that didn't really materialize. So this is an opportunity in that for the city. Now, where has the money? The money has always been budgeted and added in to either a city hall replacement or refurbishment. I've talked with Chief Meyer years ago and I said, how is it you ended up right there? Well, I have a picture in the office there that I just recently got. This used to be the fire department where the fire trucks parked. And then over there used to be the police department and that and in the city hall and upstairs. And so this building has been repurposed many, many times. But because of its design and that the plumbing is an issue, and that's gonna be very expensive to repair and replace. The electrical is gonna be very, very expensive, and the size is inadequate. So I'm on board, and this is the right thing to do to move forward. And so I am all for what we're doing and moving forward for the benefit of the city for the next 50 to 100 years. Questions or comments from the commission? Questions or comments from the public? Yes, sir. Would you come forward so for the benefit of those at home?
You can stay there for us. I'll sit by it.
Okay,
Couple questions. Have we did a soil testing on this property?
not at the moment, no, but that is something that will be done. And I doubt that it's going to be any different in soil as to the Cars for Less location.
Because we already spent money to do the soil sample there. How much was that?
I'd say either Ryan or Justin, if either remember.
I don't recall.
I'd say soil samples, you'd be a few grams.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah. At the top of my head, I can't say it.
The other question, are we gonna have any issues with the overhead lines that are?
Not at this new location, no, because it will all be south of that. And the drive-through on the north side of the building will actually just drive around and come back out. So the building will be farther south of the power lines. So that, and if we were to move the power lines, that was gonna be a huge expense. Which was one of the things that, you know, that we did discuss if we use the Cars for Less location. So this being on the south side eliminates that issue.
Holes would be in that boulevard.
Yeah. Yep.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Pitts, if you would, for the benefit of those at home, if you wouldn't mind coming forward in that so that they can hear you better. And then if you would state your name for the radio who is listening.
My name's David Pitts. I'm a taxpayer here in town, as well as a taxpayer rural. I own the adjacent property there. Has any of the commissioners beside the mayor went with me to look at the west end of that property? Anybody looked at it?
With you or?
What's that?
I went with
Have they
him,
gone with you?
or have they gone?
Have you
Either one.
looked at it? The west end, west third of it is so green, I think you could walk on it. How it got that way, I do not know. It was designed for the runoff from the field to go to the west. Anything going into that pond was, strictly runoff there. But that is so green, I don't know where it came from. Now,
It's algae very similar to Lake Herman, and that in places also from the lack of water movement.
You're talking the grass?
No, the water.
the water.
The west end, the water is, has a lot of algae in it.
Now, does anybody know if this is in the floodplain?
Is it in the floodplain?
Yes.
The pond itself wouldn't matter because we are not gonna be building there, and where the building is at is out of the floodplain. So, the floodplain, does go along the south end of the pond in that, and, so, but the pond being in the floodplain does not affect where the building's gonna be sitting.
Even if, like in 93, and again, a couple of years ago there in the fall, the water got pretty high, it went over the highway.
I
Does
agree with
flow
that.
into the pond?
In 93 and that, I did not look at the pond, but I do know that the house did not have water up to it. And
But that
and
sits
so
quite a bit higher.
it does sit quite a bit higher. You're absolutely right. Actually, in that, it sits about 12 feet higher than the lower end of the property. And I know that because we went out with the transit, to determine what the elevation was. So, but as far as the pond itself, is it in the floodplain? I don't have 100% answer for you, but from the standpoint of affecting this building, it would not have an effect on this building.
How about the fishing part of it?
I don't have an answer for you there, but if it gets flooded and that, you know, I think that's habitat for the fish, so I don't, you know, I'm not certain, you know, how it would affect them. Might it give them the opportunity to join Lake Madison if it did flood? That is a possibility.
Now, the sides are awful steep on that.
Correct. You and I visited about that, yes. The thing, you know, the concern that you had when we were out there was, would people on four-wheelers be riding on it? And I can equivocally answer you, the answer would be no. You know, and the other thing in that, you know, we visited about was that is going to be the most visible pond to the police department of any park in town, because it's going to be right outside their windows. So I have no, you know, no issues, you know, with having that there. If we put trails around it, I'm going to make the assumption that we would have engineered trails, which would mean that they would cut into the slope so that the trails going around would be sufficiently above the water and people would be able to traverse all the way around. You know, and then, you know, you and I talked about, you know, the weed control, and that would be up to Michael, who's sitting right over there in the Parks Department. He is our weed control for all the parks in the city of Madison. So I think that the weed control that you and I talked about would be improved from where it is right now. So
Right now, it's not a problem.
no, and I don't think it will be either. You know, that's the nice thing about it. You know, is once it becomes a city park, it's gonna be maintained more like a city park, you know, where it will be made sure that there's no weeds and it will be very presentable for the public.
The
And-
city ready for the additional expenses of the park? Additional expenses of taking care of it?
Is one of the things that will come with the program. So I'm gonna say the answer is yes. It will be something that will be looked at and added into the budget as needed.
Russ, are these aerated or typically or not?
No, we typically don't. There hasn't been a need to aerate, especially if they're 15 foot deep. Usually if it's an old gravel borrow pit, there's usually some sort of spring. And if there hasn't been a fish kill on a dry, hot year like this, it's usually not an issue. We especially would advocate against aeration during the winter time in case anyone wants to get out on the ice. That creates unsafe situations. So any aeration that could be done would be in the summertime, and I don't think it would be necessary.
Now, the trees, I think there's a 7.5 foot setback from the property line. The trees that are there are grandfathered in, I imagine. I don't know. Is that right?
Which trees?
It's on the south side of the water hole or the fishing pond, or there's evergreen trees there.
Yes, they are beautiful evergreen trees, and I would not anticipate that we would do anything with those. The only trees that I see that we would be doing anything with would be the ones between that property and the Cars for Less, which the birds planted a number of those. You can tell that they're just randomly, you know, dropped in there and that. So those are the only ones that I think that we would do anything with at all.
So the property line would have a 7.5 foot setback on along the driveway as well as farther west. Is that
Which
right?
driveway?
The south driveway.
The south driveway, we would not be utilizing at all, because the gravel one is yours, is on your property. And Mr. Highland has a lease, easement to use that. And that is not anything in that would be part of what the city purchases.
Now, where is the city gonna annex at the end of the driveway? Will that jump out farther to the south?
No, it will be along the current property line. It will not have any effect on the driveway that you have south of his building.
But the annexation would come,
North of his property. Can you bring that slide back up again? Great questions, thank you.
So the annexation would be all of
C.
C as well as that corner that's left out where he'd be living. Right now, that's one parcel and the annexation is what he has voluntarily petitioned to be annexed.
See, and then, and if you notice, if you can slide that up just a little bit, the driveway that is south of that, the driveway that is on the south side of the picture in the lower right-hand corner, that is on David's property, Mr. Pitts's property. And currently, that is a driveway in that Mr. Highland uses. He will have a new driveway that comes in below the line, yellow line on the north side of his building, coming to Highland Avenue. That way, it will allow him to come in and access his garage and that from the north. And then the driveway that he has on the south side, primarily in that, I don't see him using that much at all after that.
And the trees will stay with the 7.5 foot setback, is that correct?
Which trees?
It's along after the notch down. He's planted evergreen trees there that are beautiful trees. And they will stay there with the 7.5 foot.
We haven't discussed the trees. We haven't
Okay.
decided. Do you have a preference with the trees? What would happen to them?
No, I just want to know what's expected.
I have talked with him, and what he would like to do is the ones that he has that are above the yellow line there, he wants to move those just down south to be east of his building. Because they would be where we would take them down because of the parking lot on the plans. And so he has asked if he could move those. I see no issue with it. So he will move them probably to where it's going to be south of what would be his new driveway on the north side of the building going out to Highland.
Okay, how far from Highland Avenue will the first tree be?
I don't have an answer on that, but there's already trees there. I do not see him planting them any closer than the trees that are near Highland Avenue right now. They will
Sometimes
be
we swing
between
in
there and his building.
Swing in there with a combine with a big head on it. Just so. they
Oh, no,
don't
you
come-
won't be coming, you're talking about the driveway down below
Yeah,
that you currently use. Yeah, no, he won't be putting them down that far.
I mean, for the record, that's his property.
That is his.
And
Well,
we won't
the
have any
driveway
control
is,
over that.
the driveway on the south side is.
Correct, but the
Yeah.
yellow line is what the city would be.
Yeah, the yellow lines with the city would be purchasing.
Outside of that, he would maintain that and he would.
but how close to Highland would you allow him to put the first tree?
We haven't discussed that.
Let me ask Ryan, in general, how far from streets would we let, or Mike, we got two good guys here.
Yep.
Trees from streets.
I'm looking at it right now, them trees are planted about roughly 40 foot from the center line of the road right now. And that's a rough estimate off of my phone. As of right now, I can't tell you what the easement or what the right of way width is here, but it looks like it's a. Yes, I think this is the wider.
33 or 51.
Did the state buy some land? When they made the bypass there further south, they did that continue up?
When you look at the property line and that it comes up like this, then it does this and goes up again. So it is not a straight line. So further south on yours, the right of way is further to the west. And as it comes north, it moves over closer to the road.
Yeah, the state bought, I think 12.5 feet there when they made the bypass.
Yeah,
I owned in the middle of the road, and then they bought, I think 12.5 feet
mhm,
inside of the property line.
mhm.
The right of way at the bridge is about 100 foot wide, by according to Beacon.
Yep, but now it changes as soon as you come up to where Mr. Highland's place is there, because there's a portion in the property description, it says except for lot such and such. And when I looked into that, that's where the highway line comes up and it comes into his a little bit and then it jogs over to the east and then goes up closer to the road along Highland.
I would say that from the property line. Well, 20 foot maybe from the edge of the road to his grass. That's what I'm guessing. Probably right in there.
But it does make a difference, because it is wider, starting right down there at the end of his property and going onto yours. The right of way goes further into your property than it does into his.
You can see the state purchased this additional easement. is what
Yeah.
you're saying,
Yeah,
right?
it
You can
was.
see it on Beacon here.
Yeah,
I think it was 12.5 feet, but I'm not sure on that.
it does make a jog, no question.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for your questions, because that answers a lot of the questions for the public as well. You know, so that really is helpful.
Thanks for coming.
Anyone else, other questions?
I got one more.
Okay, Marshall, if you wouldn't mind coming forward.
I know it's early yet. Can you speak of what kind of price we're gonna pay for this yet, or no?
On the property itself?
Yes,
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 250, and the property was for sale before at over 400. And that it was market value.
250, and then he keeps,
He keeps his insurance.
who tears down the old building?
Chances are we will tear down the building, but we will let him take as much stuff out of it as he wants and that before it ever materializes to that point.
Do we know what that's gonna cost? to tear
At this
down?
point, the answer is no. But also due to where its location is, it may also provide an opportunity for the fire department to practice. Because it's far enough away from other buildings and that, and trees and that may be a possibility.
Even if we annex it in town, I don't think you can burn. My understanding is you can't burn in town, so if we annex it
You may
in,
be correct.
Yeah.
And I may stand corrected.
Okay.
Okay.
that
Thank
might
you
be
for asking.
something to look at before we annex it.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else?
Right, just like to say, I think you're the Serena Williams of municipal land purchases.
Thank you. Okay. If no other further discussion,
I'll just say we have a lot of discussion, certainly appreciate the public
Yes.
input. I got two Justins here, one's from architecture firm, one's our police chief. Either of you have anything to add that you think is worth mentioning or?
I can go ahead.
Go right ahead.
Come on up.
Since I made the trip up,
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Justin Olson, RSA. I just want to say we've been working on this project with Chief Meyer since 2017, when we talked about remodeling this space. And it was our intention to do that. We found that cost prohibitive. Just to recap, everybody already knows, and we moved out to the Cars for Less lot. I think we were always kind of fighting with the site, with the north site for the Cars for Less. The building fits fine. The parking and the access was the question always. I do believe that once this option of the south site was brought to our attention, it just makes a lot more sense from the future of the city. You know, from a design standpoint, from the future parking considerations, as well as what you can do with that existing Cars for Less site. It just opens up a lot more opportunities. So, there's always a question of, is the added cost worth it? But for the future of the city, to me, it seems as it is. It just gives us a lot more opportunities for this building and for the future. So that's all I have. It's been a pleasure working with everybody to this point on this plan. Absolutely love working with the city of Madison. You've all been great to work with. So appreciate that. And we look forward to continuing that on and seeing this through. So.
Justin, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to open it to questions from the commission.
What makes us so enjoyable to work with?
Just really agreeable to everything. I mean, there's a lot of different departments that have a lot of needs, and it's been a pleasure to work with all of them. So I think you all get along very well, and I think a lot of good conversations have been in this room in the last couple of years. So
Thank you.
yeah.
And I'm going to open it up now to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would have a question in that for the architect firm that has been working with us on this? Well, thank you, Justin. And with that, do we have a motion?
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Years ago, in the paper, about the bonding issue. If there's a new police station, probably would have to have a bond, is that right?
Jameson?
I'm thinking maybe what you're referencing is when the county has put it to a vote. Would that sound right to you, Justin?
Yes.
Yes,
The county at one point was gonna be building a joint facility with us, and they took a bond to a public vote. And I think then we even, it fell through between the city and county at some point, but the vote went through and then it failed. We would not be anticipating any extra opt-out or bond votes.
Does the state have a limit, evaluation versus bond?
All municipalities would have a debt limit that's equal to a percentage of the total assessed value. I don't, and so that's for all debt in general, regardless of it's bonding or otherwise.
Now, in the paper several years ago, if I read the paper right, the city was up to the limit on that bonding.
and we have
Where does
paid
that-
off, we have paid off some debt since then. As an example in that, you'll notice that the tax levy request for this year or for next year went down because the payment for the swimming pool is paid off this year.
But as right now, you're not near the limit, the state limit. Is that right?
To my knowledge and that I have not looked into that.
Correct.
So you are correct. We are not near that limit.
And each year, as the assessed value for the whole town, which is, it's a lot of property, as that continues to increase, that increases our debt limit too, so it gives us a little bit more breathing room. And then we're paying down our debts at the same time.
It's all right with Herman Township to take that off the tax record.
I did not discuss with them.
I just.
So if there anyone here from there that has a question? I don't see one and it's been publicized, so I don't imagine that they had any questions. Okay, and I did call for the vote. Do we have a motion?
Do you want me to walk through the resolution at all?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
want public to know as much as possible.
Okay, so then the next item on the agenda was resolution 2022-44. Whenever the city has a request for voluntary annexation, we have a standard resolution that we put together for that.
Whoops, we're still on number one. We're on number two.
Number one doesn't require a vote. It's
Yeah,
just an
what vote?
update.
Okay, no, sounds good.
Okay. Go ahead,
And,
Bob.
yep, no, you're just ahead of me and I'm just behind.
Oh, that's okay, we're all caught up.
You just go ahead, we're caught up.
So the resolution walks through, like the high level view is that this property, when annexed in, would have the full rights and services of every other property in town when it comes to streets, solid waste, parks, library, fire, safety, police, all those services that we offer would be extended to this new property. There's nothing unusual in this. The legal description has been vetted and is included in there. I think it's pretty straightforward. This is the resolution that is required to be passed for them to be officially annexed.
And it's a voluntary annexation. There are two different types, voluntary and involuntary. And voluntary is when the property owner comes and asks to become part of the city. That's what this is. Involuntary is when the city goes and tells somebody we want to annex you. So that's the differences between the two. This is a voluntary annexation. He has asked to be annexed into the city of Madison.
Why are we doing it right now?
Two reasons. Number one, in that he has a home that has been burned, that is non-livable. And he wants to add a small addition to his shop so that he has a place in that to spend the winter, inside. And so he has asked to start this process, be annexed in now so that he can get, an addition to the west side of his shop built and enclosed before winter, so he has a warm place to spend the winter.
Is to be annexed to do that, I think it.
He does in order to work with our department and that to move forward, and the answer is yes.
If the county restrictions would be that there only be one sanitary system per lot of a certain size.
And one residence on 10 acres.
Yeah, and so there's already residents here, which he does not intend to repair. We'd have to annex in. There'll be future actions to replat and then ultimately to purchase the piece that the city be looking for. I do want to be clear, we've given this large update on the whole project, where it's been, the direction we're heading, and the new location. And if there's any qualms about the new location or any concerns, I'd be interested to hear them. Because I don't think he'd be wanting to be annexed unless he was selling that piece of the property.
Well, like Marshall said, you know, if we wanted to burn that house down, nice to do that before it got annexed.
Yeah, I wouldn't make a decision making based on the training for the fire department.
Well,
Maybe Kelly could speak towards it.
Something to keep in
It's
mind.
nice to keep training for them, but I wouldn't let that be your sole decision making factor.
Thank you.
Other questions?
What is the price tag? of the
Sir,
house?
would you come up and,
I just.
no, for the public and that, if you come forward, identify yourself for the radio and
Jim Casanova,
Yep.
what's the price tag? $500,000?
on what?
That house.
250. With all the property that goes with it.
I heard the rumor around was $500,000, but,
Okay, the rumor is wrong because I've been the one doing negotiating.
okay.
And so I can
I know
tell you
him
in
pretty
that,
well. I'll find out.
you will find out because that's what it is. It's,
Where are you getting a $250,000 plus the 100,000 destroyed all? Except you burn it,
Oh, we can't.
nope.
huh?
It is something that has been budgeted for and talked about for a number of years. And so there is already money that's been set aside for renovation or replacement of the city hall. I don't know what that number is. It's currently in there. And then there was also a second cent.
In general, we've, and Sonia can outline the money we set aside and saved up in reserve so far. We've also got some bonding that we tied to the, along with same bonds as the RD project, so it's.
But how do you figure that far in advance with Billy just decided to sell it in the last 6 months?
This hasn't been the last 6 months. This started back when I was mayor before. That's 9 years ago. And so we've been putting the money away since even before that.
Yeah,
For-
don't the city got 20 acres without Bill Highland's land to build? Why they gotta go south?
The proposal is to have everyone in the same complex area so that we can have access to all of our departments and that without everybody having to get in their vehicles and drive in different areas around town. And this year is, cost wise, this is actually cheaper than any place else that we were gonna build or that we would look at building in town.
Well, I don't know this year, pretty spendy for many to tell me about it.
I missed part of your question.
I'd say the cost of building that property now has doubled from 3 years ago.
We aren't building it now.
No,
It
you're
will
gonna build it
be,
next year.
or the year
Yeah.
after. That has not been determined yet.
You make a good point, building
But you do
prices.
I just was
certainly are
wondering
going
where
up.
the money coming besides the taxpayers, I suppose. Is that right?
Well, it's the taxpayers that help take care of the city of Madison. And we're the ones that have been elected to make those decisions for the best and best use of the dollars.
I don't know if they're making all the right decisions, but anyway, thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Jim. We appreciate that.
So. Other questions?
Sonia, what's that reserve called?
They drive a guy
The
right out of the city.
reserve for the city hall.
It's City Hall Reserve?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it's.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's how, old? Do you know how old it is, how many years it's been
I
open?
don't know how long it's been open. I know that both the finance office or finance departments and the police departments have been putting money in there for quite some time. I
Yes.
can't tell you.
Several years, though, correct?
More than a decade. Because the fund was already there when I came on as mayor before. And we budgeted to it every year.
I do want to address the rising building costs, because that certainly is a factor to consider. It's risen a lot over the last year. We don't expect them to be falling. If we want to move in a different direction, we want to look at re-renovating that. That's kind of been ruled out in the past, but whatever the case is, there's needs for a police department and our other departments as well. And costs aren't going to be going down. So if there's a different direction that needs to be made, we need that direction sooner rather than later. And if we decide that this building is going to fit our needs for 50 years and we need to move forward regardless of that, so before costs go up even more, then that's the direction we're looking for.
And it is unfortunate that building prices aren't gonna come down. It is what it is. Things have changed in 3 years since we started this process, or however long it has been. I understand that. I'm trying to do what's best for the growth of this community. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I think we already expressed our need, and I think we're on the right path.
Were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, Kip's got 4 kids under 5 that he's gotta feed and get ready for bed. So if you don't have any more questions about the fisheries part, we're gonna bounce.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for coming. Hey, do we have a motion?
And, if we're talking about the resolution, yeah.
Motion on adopt resolution 2022-44, annex Bill Highlands property.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving down to number 6. Authorize the mayor to sign the revocable occupancy permit for the public right of way with the state of South Dakota. And Justin, would you like to speak to this one?
Good evening. Yeah, this permit is in reference to our flock cameras. In case you haven't heard, we've put some cameras up along the roadway. The revocable is for the fact of if the state wants to come in and do some work on those poles where those cameras are hung, it is the city's responsibility and at the city's cost to get those cameras down while the work is completed. And then also would be our cost to put them back up. We've had the cameras in use for about a month right now, and we've had a couple of early successes with them. They've helped us in some other cases that haven't made the public as well. So I think so far it's a good investment, and we're trying to get everything up and running with these.
Very good.
Forward for the IT coordinator. I think it was a great investment. And if it deters people from coming to this community to do drugs and sell drugs and bring their stolen vehicles in here, then it's a win.
I would agree with you, so I appreciate it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when those vehicles came to town, if it weren't for that, we didn't see any other necessary reason to have stopped them.
That is correct.
And so that meant that they could have come to town, done whatever business that they wanted to do. And if they were out of sight, out of mind, we may not have caught them. But because of the cameras and the information and that comes from the national network, that's what gave us the opportunity to do that.
That is correct. And those notifications came to us within, well, they were under 10 seconds. The camera that utilized this was over in the area of Prairie and Third. Our officers responded and met those vehicles, both of them at the intersection of Second and Egan. So that tells you how quickly those notifications come through and when we respond. And both of those incidents happened without any further incident, and they were definitely huge wins.
Any other questions or comments? Questions from the audience? If no questions, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Update on the Madison System Improvements Project. Okay, Weston, you're gonna bring us up to date?
All right.
Quick
Thanks.
background here. So I think as we're approaching the end of the construction season, we'll have updates on the projects. Every meeting, some will be larger than others. This one will be a quicker one. And we have our newly instated city engineer, Weston, to join us. So thank you for joining us, Weston.
Included in your packet should have been a project update flyer. So this was prepared specifically for the projects partially funded by rural development, which included phase 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. And then there's a project map as well, indicating where each of those phases are. So starting off here, project information, contractors, we've got J&J Earthworks on one of the projects, which would be phase 1A and phase 1B, and Homey Inc. They're the contractors on phase 2. I've also got information on the bid price, which the project bid price for these 4 specific phases was $15,570,926. And to date, the percent complete is estimated at 75%. That'd be the completion based on the value earned on the contracts. So going into phase 1A, which would have been the construction that took place in 2020 and 2021, there's still some remaining punch list items that need to be completed. That's been, a punch list has been given to the contractor, And they're gonna be working on that punch list to complete that this fall. There's also a few sidewalk items yet to be completed. There's some pedestrian ramps that need to be completed yet. Phase 1B is currently under construction. That's another project that J&J Earthworks is a contractor for. They've been working on the utilities that'd be located on the map here, in the orange highlight, which would be the northwest portion of town. J&J has been working on the utilities. They've got all the utilities completed in the base bid, or they're planning to have them complete at the end of this week. And they're gonna move over to Union Avenue and start that construction likely next week. So we'll be notifying residents that roadway will be closed here fairly soon. And if there's any questions moving through this, go ahead and interrupt. I'll just go through each phase one by one.
The part of North Chicago by the elementary school, do you know when they'll have that taken care of?
They have gravel on North Chicago right now.
Okay.
There is gonna be some challenges with access on North Chicago since the Northwest 9th Street project is starting this week. So that access will be allowed through the school entrance and exit. But as far as from Chicago to get on the 9th Street, that's gonna be restricted for a short period of time anyways. Any questions regarding phase 1B in that area, in the northwest part of town?
The only thing in that I had, calls from people today was when they came down and they saw all the signs up and that, and they didn't think that they could get out of the neighborhood. Well, they could by going south another block and then coming back east so when I got the phone call, I hadn't driven up there to see, but I did, and Ryan did also, and so we kind of, let them know that there will be a way out. They just may have to look to see it. Because Williams Addition only has one way in, one way out.
Yep. And having both projects close together like that, there is gonna be some challenges with access. Both contractors are gonna have to work together to make sure that there's an access route through the projects. Because they'll need that for haul routes as well and access themselves.
So they're gonna start on Union from second to
fifth. Yep.
Okay.
The roadway work on that phase 1B project is following pretty close behind the utility crews. They've been in town 2 weeks now, and I believe they've gravelled four blocks, 4 or 5 blocks. So there's gonna be some, they're gonna try to keep the access to all the residents, try to keep as much access as they can to the residents, leave the roadway closures to a minimum.
Do you think they'll get most of 1B paved this fall?
That's their intent, is to pave the entire 1B project, so that'd be 5th Street, all the northwest streets, and then Union Avenue as well.
I hope so.
That's what we got Weston for, right?
That.
Drive that home.
I can help enforce the contract.
There we go.
Phase 2A, so that'd be everything on the east side of town. Halmy Inc. is a contractor on that project. They've been performing utility installation. They've gotten asphalt paving completed on Summit Avenue, Lincoln Avenue, 9th Street. There was a block on 7th Street, a block on 8th Street. They did the 2 blocks in front of the college, 3 blocks in front of, 2 blocks in front of the college. And they're currently working on utilities on Prairie Avenue. The roadway crew is going to be mobilizing in next week. They'll start coring out and reconstructing the roadway between 5th and 7th Street. And then they'll continue either north or south, depending on where the utility crew is. They have the same plan to complete paving on Prairie Avenue by the end of this year.
How far up are they on Prairie?
So they've got utilities installed to 6th, between 6th and 7th. They would like to continue. Utilities installed to 7th. They've got part of the block installed to 8th. And then they'd like to continue from 8th to 9th. They've been advancing on Prairie, leaving most of the curb and gutter in and restoring driveway access to the residents. just for the fact that we don't have alleyways over in that area. Some of those residents would be kind of locked out of their, driveways, or wouldn't have very good access. They'd have to cross the grade to get to their homes. And and Almy had indicated they're gonna make that a priority, try to maintain access as long as they can to those residents.
Will the curb and gutter come out up there then eventually? Okay.
Yep. All of that curb and gutter is scheduled for replacement.
This is a big project for Madison, and it'll be nice when it's over. People are getting tired of their streets being tore up, but thanks for holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, well, I mean, both contractors, they've been advancing the project. There's, been a number of items that would, you've seen it, a number of items that had to be removed and replaced. And that was, part of that. Holding that contractor to the specifications of the project. And they've willingly done that and replaced that defective work and moving forward on the project.
Absolutely, that's important too. We want a high quality product at the end here. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, if there's any questions.
Questions or comments from the commission?
Just, I know we would appreciate it, Justin, Ryan, anything you could do to keep that heat on, keep everybody on the correct schedule.
And I think one of the benefits has been that we haven't had rainy weather like we did a few years ago, and that where everybody was playing in the mud, so that's gonna help a little bit too. So,
Before you leave, could you touch on 9th and Union?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yep.
When you do, yeah.
9th and Union contractor started to mobilize in today. Mobilized some of their equipment yesterday and this morning as well. They're doing utility locates right now. They're locating the gas main and some of the services along the 9th Street corridor. They're planning on removals tomorrow, so they have a subcontractor come in and remove the asphalt and some of the sidewalk as well. And on Wednesday, they're going to start installing water main between Highland and West Avenue. There will be a short period of time where they're going to have to reroute traffic on West Avenue, that being the only access to that north development. They're likely going to have to put in a temporary gravel access road.
Thank you. And then the water tower, are we expecting any reconstruction to start, or what's all depending on materials, I assume?
Depending on materials, I haven't been involved in any meetings regarding the water tower. I'd have to reach out to Kristen to speak to that.
Ryan, can you speak to it? Just quick update.
I don't have any additional updates from what we mentioned before. I think it's gonna probably be delayed a year. We're probably looking at about this time next year to completion of that.
Weston, do you have an idea of where that gravel access may be?
Yes, it's likely going to be on the west side of West Avenue, so near the detention pond. There's a Sioux Falls Inlet just north of that intersection. I believe it'd be on the north side of that Sioux Falls Inlet, so it'd cross over the berm or the top of that detention pond, and they'd have to build an access ramp through the ditch.
And they're gonna be driving cars through there to get into the 9th Street in the Williams addition.
Yep, access would come from the west and take that gravel access road.
Then they're gonna go across the sidewalk and stuff with their vehicles, so all the sidewalks will be replaced if they're cracked.
They're gonna have to build up that grade with some type of temporary gravel.
It's all.
I know that was one of the main concerns we fielded. Access and up there, so that's good.
And that'll be, expected of the contractor to maintain that, especially in wet weather conditions.
Oh, we'll keep our fingers crossed. The snow doesn't fly for a while and it stays really dry.
Any questions? Other questions?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We really don't need a motion on this one, since it's just an update. And then, Sonia, number 8, discuss ordinance recodification. Do you want to address that since Jameson stepped out for the moment?
So we're getting towards the final parts of that recodification process that started over a year ago. And we've sent copies of them all to you to take a look at, see if you have any concerns with pieces that have been removed, pieces that have been cleaned up. There were a lot of areas where there were things already in state code, so we didn't need to duplicate it in city code. So that's the accumulation of all the meetings that we've had with the attorney here, with David Jenks, as well as Unicode's attorney and Jameson and myself. And Justin, in some cases, has had a couple of items that he'd like addressed as well. So at this point, we're just looking for, as you've reviewed it, other concerns that you have, things that didn't make sense, things that you thought we needed to clean up a little further. Justin had sent an email off to us a couple weeks ago, and copied David on it with regard to just a couple of language cleanup things that were a little concerning, and I can be okay if I read that.
Yeah.
Justin's comments after his first breeze through. Here's Article 5 of the Board of Health has been removed. However, there's a subsection that refers to a health officer, and a subsection that refers to a notice of hearing and references a hearing in front of the Board of Health. So we probably will need to strike that as well in section 24. In the animal section 6.136, references anyone with an animal over the age of 3 months must obtain an electronic ID device from the agent of the city. I think his recommendation is we remove that completely.
Yeah, we haven't required that in 20 years probably, so.
Just striking that out. And then he also noted that section 4-122 speed limits. They're listing a number of streets with specific speed limits, and he just recommended that we clean it up to say residential areas are 20 miles an hour and unless otherwise posted. And then downtown parking, said that this is confusing, a little difficult to follow, wondering if we could just reference specific blocks. So make just a couple little cleanup items. Anything else?
No, it's been a couple of weeks. I don't remember. It reminded me more than what I would have recalled anyway, so.
And we would just clear that with David to make sure that it's worded correctly for.
I didn't read through the whole thing.
Shock.
It looks pretty good. I like the direction we're going. I'm mostly focused on the things that you want us to pay attention to, and it seemed like just a modernization.
Improvement.
But keeps the same. We're gonna keep doing the same things, just cleaning up our codification is, and that's what we want. So thank you.
We also want to make it, more readable and that for the public. Jameson?
Yeah, I reviewed all the substantive changes and I thought I'd have a few questions or clarifications at the end, and I had only one, and Sonia solved it quickly, so I think it's a very well done recodification process.
Anyone else?
I read it.
Hey, I don't think we need a motion on this one here, it's just a discussion.
Yeah, it will come back to you once it's completely finalized.
Do we have any public comment on the list of them? Okay, seeing none, under announcements, our next commission meeting, the regular meeting will be Tuesday, September 19th.
The 19th is a Monday.
That's what I was thinking too, so.
No more holidays coming up.
Today was Monday all day for me and that, so. Any questions? I want to thank everybody in the audience for coming and for your questions and that, because it's important to you. It's also important to those people who were not in attendance, to be able to hear the concern. So With that, do we have a motion to go into executive session? That's on.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are now in executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
You're more than welcome.
I don't think we have to do it.